August 29, 2005, New Orleans, Louisiana. The hurricane had already passed. The storm tracked east of the city. The eye made landfall near the Louisiana-Mississippi border. New Orleans appears to have been spared the direct hit. That broadcast went out just after sunrise. 4 hours later, 80% of the city was underwater. Hurricane Katrina made its second landfall at 6:10 in the morning near Boris Triumph, at the tip of Plaquemines Parish, 60 miles southeast of New Orleans. The eye never crossed the city. Buildings were standing, levees were holding, and then, one by one, they were not. Here's what took years of federal investigation to establish. The levees did not fail because Katrina was too strong. They failed at load levels they were designed to withstand. The Army Corps had rated the system for a Category 3 storm. Katrina made landfall as a Category 3. The levees failed anyway because the design was flawed, the soil analysis was wrong, and the warnings had been filed without response for decades. The official death toll stands at 1,833. A 2014 peer-reviewed mortality study placed the real figure, accounting for displacement and delayed deaths, above 4,000. That number has never been officially adopted. New Orleans sits inside a geographic bowl, a Lake Pontchartrain to the north, the Mississippi River curving along the south, Lake Bourne opening to the east. Most of the city rests 6 to 8 feet below sea level on soft, slowly sinking delta soil. The only thing between the Gulf and the people inside it is roughly 350 miles of levee, flood wall, and pump infrastructure, under construction since the 1960s and never finished. In 2001, FEMA ranked a major hurricane strike on New Orleans as one of the 3 most catastrophic potential disasters in the country.
In the summer of 2005, New Orleans is under attack.
It got scary, put it that way. It got real scary.
For the 100,000 people trapped by Hurricane Katrina, this will be a week from hell.
Honestly sounded like cars were landing on the roof.
LSU researcher Ivor Van Heerden had published repeated warnings that a direct Gulf storm would flood the city in a bathtub effect, water pouring in from every direction with nowhere to drain. Those warnings moved through federal and state agencies. They were received, acknowledged, and not acted upon. The 3 drainage canals at the center of what followed ran like arteries through the city. The 17th Street Canal ran north from mid-city to Lake Pontchartrain along the Jefferson Parish line. The London Avenue Canal ran parallel 2 miles to the east through Gentilly toward the lake. The Industrial Canal cut east from the river through the lower 9th Ward toward Lake Bourne. All 3 had flood walls built to a design containing a fundamental miscalculation about lateral pressure in saturated soil. The walls looked solid, and the math behind them was not. Katrina crossed southern Florida near Hallandale Beach on August 25th.
In Jefferson Parish went back to class today, and
overseas, Iraq has edged closer to
and life after. The storm didn't just drown a city, it exposed failures, shattered families, and tested the soul of New Orleans.
Like a bomb completely blew up this side of the building.
As a Category 1 storm, 80-mile-per-hour winds, 7 killed, and entered the Gulf of Mexico near Cape Romano. Gulf water temperatures in the Central Basin ran 2 to 4 degrees above seasonal average, and Katrina underwent rapid intensification. By the morning of August 28th, it had reached peak intensity. Sustained winds of 175 miles per hour, central pressure of 902 millibars, one of the lowest Atlantic Basin readings on record. The storm was 400 miles wide. Hurricane-force winds extended 103 miles from center. On August 28th, the National Weather Service office in New Orleans issued a bulletin unlike anything it had published before. It warned the metro area would be uninhabitable for weeks. Mayor Nagin issued the first mandatory evacuation in the city's history. Between 80 and 90% of residents left. Roughly 100,000 did not dash the elderly, hospitalized without transportation. Approximately 10,000 entered the Superdome. Katrina weakened slightly in its final approach. At 6:10 in the morning on August 29th, the eye made landfall near Boris Triumph, Louisiana, 60 miles southeast of New Orleans. Sustained winds of 125 miles per hour, central pressure 920 millibars. The storm tracked north-northwest. By 9 o'clock in the morning, the eye was crossing into Mississippi near Pearlington, Hancock County. It moved northeast through Hattiesburg and Laurel, weakening to a tropical storm over central Mississippi by early afternoon. By evening, the remnants were tracking northeast into the Tennessee Valley. New Orleans was on the western, weaker half of the storm. The city never took a direct hit, and it drowned regardless. The first breach came before the eye even made landfall. At approximately 5 o'clock in the morning, storm surge from Lake Bourne had been driven northwest up the Mississippi River Gulf outlet, a 76-mile channel running from the open Gulf into the eastern metro. The surge breached the Industrial Canal floodwall near North Claiborne Avenue and Jordan Avenue in the lower 9th Ward. What came through was not a flood, it was a wall of water. Houses were lifted off foundations. Water reached 12 feet in the lowest parts within an hour. At approximately 6 o'clock in the morning, the east wall of the 17th Street Canal failed near Bel Air Drive in Lakeview, not an overtopping. The water level had not exceeded the wall's rated capacity. An investigation would find the sheet pile foundation had been driven to insufficient depth and the soil pressure calculations had understated the saturated load. Lakeview began filling from the north, water moving south along Canal Boulevard toward City Park. By mid-morning, the neighborhood sat under 10 feet. Later that morning, the London Avenue Canal breached twice. Near Robert E. Lee Boulevard on the east bank, Gentilly began flooding to the south. A second breach half a mile north pushed water into Fillmore and Pontigue. These three primary failures combined with more than 50 additional overtopping events to put 80% of New Orleans underwater by 11 o'clock in the morning. Some areas stayed that way for more than 6 weeks. The Army Corps commissioned the Interagency Performance Evaluation Task Force. Its 2006 findings used 2 words: engineering failures, failures tied to design flaws, inadequate soil analysis, and construction quality problems that had existed in the infrastructure for years before the storm. The storm did not exceed the system failed. Herbert Freeman Jr. stayed with his mother, Ethel Freeman, 73, and dependent on a wheelchair. They made their way to the Ernest N. Memorial Convention Center, not designated as a shelter, but drawing tens of thousands who had nowhere else to go. No food, no water, no medical staff, no FEMA presence for the first 4 days. Ethel Freeman died outside the building in her wheelchair, waiting for transportation that did not arrive. Her son sat with her body for several days before crews reached them. Journalists documented the scene. 34 patients died at Memorial Medical Center on Napoleon Avenue, a facility that lost power and cooling and sat surrounded by floodwater for days. Some of those deaths became the subject of a criminal investigation into whether staff had administered lethal doses to patients who could not be evacuated. The investigation ran for years. No charges were sustained. What happened inside that building has never been resolved. The official count is 1,833. Louisiana recorded approximately 1,577 of them. The 2014 study in Paul's Currents disasters placed the real figure above 4,000, accounting for excess mortality across the 12 months that followed. No federal agency has adopted that number. It has never been officially corrected. The investigations produced millions of pages. FEMA had been placed inside the Department of Homeland Security after September 11th, stripped of cabinet access at precisely the moment that mattered. No evacuation plan had existed for residents without cars. The flood wall flaw had been documented in internal Army Corps analyses before the storm and never disclosed. In the days after August 29th, the federal response organized itself around jurisdictional questions, not around moving people to safety. New Orleans has partially recovered. A $14.5 billion federal project rebuilt most of the failed levee structures with stronger designs and deeper foundations. The lower 9th Ward, once home to roughly 14,000 people, had a population of approximately 3,000 in the most recent count. Vacant lots stand where houses stood. The street grid is intact. The neighborhood is not. What Katrina exposed was not a gap in planning. It was a structure, one in which the decisions about who got working infrastructure, who had an evacuation route, who got a rescue boat on day 1 had been made years before the storm formed. The storm struck everyone. The consequences did not fall evenly. The levees failed not because Katrina was too powerful, but because the engineering behind them had never been honest about what they could hold. And at least 1,833 people, the official minimum, paid the price for the distance between what was promised and what was true. I make these videos to tell stories that matter. Stories like this don't really end when the storm is over. They stay with the people who lived through them, and sometimes they slowly fade everywhere else. So if this story meant something to you, even for a moment, help it reach someone else. A like, a comment, even just sharing it might seem small, but it genuinely makes a difference, because every bit of support pushes these stories further and keeps them from being forgotten. Stay safe. I'll see you in the next one.